guest today here on the Phillip Jordan Show here on Wiregrass Daily News Sports is Coach Max Howell, former Florida State and Ole Miss assistant coach, 25-plus years in sports talk radio, and he is a member of the Troy Sports Hall of Fame. Coach Howell, I have no idea what we are going to discuss tonight. Nothing seems to be going on, but I appreciate you coming on.
Well, I appreciate it, Phillip, as always. And, of course, to me, it's the greatest time of the year. With the in and down the season, the bowl games now are pretty well in place. We know who the conference champions are, and we know how they got there. So then there's some that, that didn't quite make it, and we'll talk a little bit about that, I'm sure.
So I'm just going to lay the question out. I'm just basic. Did the committee get it right?
I think they did. I really do. And I'm going to give you an example. The committee, the underlying factor is that the committee needs to pick the 4 teams that are playing the best now. I didn't say that they are the best teams in America on paper, because some people say Texas is the best team on paper in the country. Well, maybe so, but they lost the game to Oklahoma, if you recall, and they ended up number 3 in the bowl selection or in the playoff selection. So I think they did. I think Alabama could play and will play with any of them. I've already got my feelers out now. I pretty well know, I think, in my mind, how the games are going to come out. So I think they did. And I think a lot of people, and I understand the situation about going undefeated, winning a conference, that was a key component there as well. But if you watch FSU, remember I coached there. I was in that first group of Coach Bowden's winning when he went 14 years in the top 5. The secondary I worked in back there has 2 NFL Hall of Famers, Deion Sanders, Leroy Butler. That was our 2 corners. We had Dexter Dodge that went to the 49ers, and Stan Shiver went to the Dallas Cowboys, all in the first round. So I know about Florida State and know what it takes to win there. And goodness, when I saw them play Florida, they won the ball game without their starting quarterback. And that was good, but that was a sloppy ball game. And then of course they go to Louisville last weekend, and they ended up with a freshman quarterback because the number 2 guy got hurt. And they did okay, but the defense won the game. And they scored 16 points. My opinion is that the committee looked at these games and said, hey, the fan base, not even the Florida State fan base, would want to see a matchup against Michigan or Washington or Texas or Alabama because they can't perform at that level with that football team. And I think that's what the committee based their feelings on, and I think that's what they got.
Yeah, because, it's always they went with, we heard all week or several weeks, since Jordan Travis went down with the injury, deserving
right.
versus best. And, look,
yep.
I'm kind of like mixed on it. Like, I feel bad for the Florida State fan base, the coaches, the players, because, I know you coaching and playing, you told if you win all your games, you should be able to win a championship. And how do you think, if you were in that locker room, if you were talking to those players, if you were a coach on that staff, how would you handle that with, how you would address your players about the situation?
Well, first thing I would probably go to them and say, hey, this is my fault, mainly, and here's something that few coaches don't want to address. But I'd say it was my fault. I didn't recruit enough top players to get us there. See, and that goes on everywhere. I mean, just think about it. They had the number 1, 2 quarterback in the country. First of all, get another kid to come in behind him, knowing he's going to get little or no playing time the first year. But however, they've got the portal now. That's my reasoning power. Hey, you come here. If you don't make it, if you don't like here, get in the portal and go. Yeah, that's your options now. But I'm telling you, very few coaches want to talk that way. I know enough of them still in the business that they don't want to expose their program to that kind of turnover. But it's here. I mean, Joe, you got to accept that. So I think that would be what I would address. I wouldn't address it by name, surely, but I would just say more quality players to not only to if we have an injury or two, because every team has them every year, not to the quarterback maybe. But I'm gonna tell you, if Alabama loses Melrose, they'll be in the same boat that Florida State's in. I'm just telling you, they don't have a quarterback can play at that level, number 2 or number 3. So that behooves him. They got a couple of redshirt kids that's supposed to be in that category, but they were trying to hold them out. But evidently Florida State didn't have that, or they didn't want to risk, the redshirt year on them. So they went with what they had, and it didn't go well enough. And I do think the committee looked ahead and said, hey, this team can't compete with the top four teams in the country and make a good showing. Now, look, I don't want to see another Cincinnati. I don't want to see another TCU as we've had the last couple of years. I want to see the four best teams in the country play, and I think that's what we got now.
Yeah, and with Florida State too. I mean, I know a lot of Florida State fans won't want to hear this part what I'm about to say, but they're going to be fine in the future too because Mike Norvell's got like a top 5 recruiting class. I mean,
Sure.
And then next year is 12. I mean, that doesn't help anybody now. I mean, I know that,
right.
But still, like future wise, I mean, and they've got their head coach there. I mean, Mike Norvell. I mean, just what's your thoughts on the job he's done these last 2 weeks with the second string quarterback, then the third string quarterback? I mean, Louisville. I mean, I know they lost Kentucky the week before, but that was a pretty solid team that they played on Saturday night and shut down completely offensively. But just your thoughts on the job that Mike Norvell has done there.
I think he's done an outstanding job. I read it, but here's another point, a physical point. Did you see the combination in the strength of schedule column?
Mm-hmm.
Alabama was number 5 in the country. Florida State was number 55 in the strength of schedule. So see, there's another problem, but it's all measured on the ACC. And if that doesn't open up people that really pull for teams in the ACC, that tell you something. Those teams, if you just cut across the center, most of those teams in the ACC can't compete on a regular basis with the SEC, and probably the Big Ten as well. Now, the only one that I got in that mix is that had played a very strong schedule is Michigan first, and I've seen Michigan play. I think Alabama will beat them. In fact, Coach, in their interviews last week when Michigan coaches finally got back on the sideline, he said, we never beat Georgia, we never beat Alabama, so we got our work cut out for us. So that tells you right now that, the competitiveness in between the leagues. But, if you know going in you can't compete, why it put you up in a situation to get embarrassed? I agree with you 100%. They're going to be okay next year, and he's done a really good job there. They're playing in the ACC, and to their, really to their credit, they tried to get out of the ACC.
Yes,
I was on the staff there when Hootie Ingram was the athletic director, and we were independent. We had a chance to go. SEC didn't want us at that particular time. So they chose the ACC because of location, but the fact is that the SEC's already got the Florida market. They got the University of Florida. So they don't need that. If the SEC, but when the SEC expands again, and they're going after North Carolina, Virginia, they want the TV markets. They got the Dallas, they got the Oklahoma market coming in next year. And a lot of people don't ever stop to think about that. That's what it's all about in expansion. It's not how well you play or who you are. What television audience can you bring? Now, in addition to that, it also matters how good your program is. I mean, they aren't going to take a program that that can't compete. But if you find North Carolina's pretty average, they're better than average some years. They want North Carolina because that brings that whole area. Virginia, I don't know about Virginia Tech or Virginia. Virginia Tech used to be very competitive, but I don't know whether they'll get there or not. So I'd say all that to you back to where Florida State is. Florida State is what they are. What they are. As my buddy though says, they is what they is, and what they is they are a good football team for that league, but without a superstar quarterback, they're going to end up just being average. Look at the point spread and look at the points they scored against Florida and against Louisville. And that was their last 2 ball games. And Florida's not very good. They won't need 500 this year. So, and they played in Gainesville, by the way. So, anyway, I say all that to say those are the reasons why I think they got it right. Now, I know the criticism came from how did Alabama jump from 8 to 4? Well, because everybody in between, Texas went at number 3. So, the other teams had either lost more or had not played well, and Alabama jumped them because they had a big win. They had the win over the number 1 team in the country, and a team that had 29 straight wins in Georgia.
Yeah, that was, of course, Coach Nick Saban was bringing that up plenty of times after the game, too, letting everybody know what they did. Let's talk about that. Well, talk about the SEC Championship game, then we'll jump into get your initial thoughts on these two playoff matchups. But Alabama defeating Georgia, I thought Alabama dominated on the line of scrimmage. I mean, we haven't seen anybody do that to Georgia probably since Alabama beat them last time 2 years ago in the SEC Championship game. But watching that game, what were some of the key reasons Alabama was able to snap Georgia's 29-game winning streak?
Well, the first thing they did, if you know, when they kicked off that series that Georgia scored on the first time, that was all scripted. And they called, remember Kirby Smart came off of Nick Saban's staff. So he pretty well knew the format, how they were going to do it. The thing he didn't count on, I think, was how quick Alabama made adjustments to a scripted offense. So Alabama knew exactly, what the strength of every player's was. And they went from a single man coverage in the secondary to twins in the back and played zone coverage on them so nobody could get behind them on either side. That was one thing. And I'm going to tell you, I guarantee you, they knew Brock Bowers was hurt. You saw him limp off the field 2 or 3 times. He's probably the best tight end in the country. And they utilized him a lot, but he was beat up. And at number 84, their other wide receiver, would limped off. So their best 2 players they weren't completely incapacitated, couldn't play, but they limped. And they threw the ball to them, and they made a few yards. They caught the ball, but they were nowhere near, perfection. And Alabama knew that. I watched the alignment on the defensive front for Alabama. They cheat over a little bit occasionally one way or the other. They gap them one time. They kept their offensive line at Georgia guessing. And of course, what they did, they put Dallas Turner, their best defensive player, out there as a defensive end, usually on the wide side. And he's I'm not saying he's not blockable, but Georgia had a tough time blocking him. I think he still got 2 sacks against Carson Beck. So anyway, those is what things I saw that Alabama, I'm going to say, was just better prepared, but what they did, they outperformed what Georgia was able to do.
Yeah, and I thought going into the game, because the week prior, we saw Auburn run the ball on Alabama very successfully with the quarterback and with running backs. Now, Georgia, Carson Beck's not really part of the quarterback run game. He's not a bad athlete, just he's a pocket passer. He's a traditional. But I thought Georgia could maybe run the game. But, 78 yards, just, kind of ties back again in my question and my thought, just how Alabama dominated. Because there was a couple of times in the game, too. Georgia was like 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. Those are first downs Georgia picks up against anybody else, but Alabama was shutting it down.
They did. Well, let me tell you why Auburn was able to do that. They run what we call misdirection. They pull the guards one way and hand off to the back going the other way. Well, guess what? Georgia didn't see that. Georgia didn't pick up on that. Alabama did. Alabama ran the same plays. They picked them off the tape from Auburn. And on top of that, I'll give you another really good observation that I know is true. Auburn sacrificed the New Mexico State game to play Alabama as good as they did. They took 2 weeks getting ready for Alabama, and they didn't acknowledge even that New Mexico State was there. I know that came from the inside. That the scout teams all week worked on Alabama's offense, not New Mexico State. So they had 2 weeks to prepare for that, and they played well. I don't think anybody out there doesn't think that team's not well coached. They got to fix some players. But Hugh Freeze has been a winner everywhere he's ever been. Brought a little baggage with him occasionally, but I think he's overcome that now. And I guarantee he brought in 42 or 43 off the portal this year. He'll bring that many again next year, including there'll probably be 1 or 2 really outstanding quarterbacks. There's over 100 quarterbacks tonight in the portal. If that'll tell you anything.
Yeah, and by the time this podcast comes out, there may be 200 out there by the time that goes out on Tuesday morning. Right. Speaking of quarterbacks, with Alabama, Jalen Milroe, it's really been amazing to me watching him this year. From what he was the first couple of games, the benching against South Florida. He's really grown as a player, as a passer this year, too, as well. What stands out to you about his game?
Well, let me just tell you. Remember, they had a new offensive coordinator. This was his first start. He's a relatively young. He came there as a 17-year-old high school kid. And by the way, he's in the middle of his 3rd year and he's getting fixed to graduate now. He'll stay and get a master's degree and still have a year of eligibility left. So he was a young kid. He's 6'2", he's 235, runs a 4.4. He's got all the academic credentials that go with that. He just had to get in the system and learn the system at the college level. Is what it is. You should ought to read his high school stats. I mean, he scored like 80-something touchdowns in high school. He's out of Katy, Texas, and he was a superstar out there. And, I think he was number 1 or number 2 pick in the country when they signed him out of high school. So they put him in a system, and I think that's why Coach Saban hired the Reese coach from Notre Dame. That he's a technician is what he is, and I think he's matured. I really be honest with you. I wasn't in favor of that hire. I thought he should have gone after somebody, probably go to the NFL and get a quarterback coach. But he didn't. He saw something in him, and certainly he was right. Now I sure wasn't right, but that's why they pay him $1 million a month, to make right decisions. And but he sure made that call, and the guys, that and Melrose has responded to it, but. See, they've still got a vacancy in my mind at number 2 and number 3. I just hope they don't have to play them. I hope Alabama will run the ball and be, pretty physical against Michigan. I don't care if they don't win by 1 point or 2 or whatever. I think the line's out already at 2.5 or 3 or something like that. It's a pick-em game, but I think Alabama will run it, try to keep the score low. And of course, if they most of those runs, by the way, if you listen to Coach Saban's post-game conference, somebody asked him about Melrose running the ball. Didn't run quite as much the other night against Georgia as he had. But he said most of those are design runs. In other words, he may roll out, and passing is his second option. When he gets to the line of scrimmage, he'll see if anybody's open. If you notice, in the game before, against Auburn, he crossed the line a couple of times. Mm-hmm. That's highly unusual for him. He's got he knows where the line of scrimmage is, but he's learning. Let's put it that way. I don't think Michigan's offense is going to give Alabama much on their defensive side, but I do think their defense, they're going to line up and try to hit Alabama in the mouth and slow them down. Whether they can do that or not, I look for them to light it up throwing the ball, to tell you the truth. And I think they'll get him out of the pocket some. He still gave up, the offensive front still gave up 4 sacks the other night. And they've given up 36 or 37 sacks this year. And they still would, they would 11 ball games. So, it is what it is. And Alabama's ready. And I think they got 28 days to get ready. And Coach Saban said they'll give the players off this week from regular practice. They'll lift weights and run. Then he'll get them in the playing mode in the next 2 weeks. Let's say they got 28 days to get ready.
Yeah, and with Michigan too. I think Michigan for Alabama's the worst matchup they could have got because they're very similar in what they want to do.
That's true.
And I've always looked at it with Alabama and Georgia. If you do what they do, it's hard to beat. That's why I didn't think if Michigan and Georgia matched up, I didn't think Michigan would match it well, just because Georgia practices against that style every day, just like Alabama, that physical style of their defense.
Right.
You pretty much tipped your hat on that one. If you think Alabama was going to pull that one out. How about the other one?
I think so.
Texas and Washington. I feel like I'm leaning toward an Alabama-Texas national championship.
I am too. Thank you very much.
Okay, so how you feel about that Texas-Washington game?
Well, Washington's another one. Remember who they play against in the Pac-12. They throw the ball a bunch out there. They don't have a very physical defense per se. Their pass defense is pretty good because they shut Bo Nix down, although not completely, but they beat him twice in the regular season. So, but Texas has got the running game. I'll be anxious to see if they can line up against Texas. Texas offensive front is supposed to be as good as anybody in the country. And so, I think they got three seniors out of that 4 starters. So I think they beat Washington. I think they beat them physically. So I think they line up, run straight at them. And I don't think Washington will be accustomed to that. Then in Alabama wins, so that's why that is the same reason I'm using why it's going to pitch Alabama and Texas back for the national championship. And I'm going to take Alabama in that one because Alabama's got something to prove. Coach Sarkisian, I thought at one time might be the heir apparent to the Alabama job when Coach Saban gets ready to retire. I don't think that now. I think them coming to the SEC, I think what he's going to do when Coach Saban retires, Phillip, I think Sarkisian brings Texas to the front. And I think because they got more money than anybody else in the conference, and probably more than both all of them put together. I mean, they could buy coaches. They could, now that with the money floating around for the prospects, they can put a program together, and they will thrive in the SEC. The biggest problem the SEC fans are going to have with Texas is Texas people going to tell them how good they are. It'll be up to them to prove it on the field is what it'll amount to.
And Texas A&M fans everywhere are upset and crying over Texas coming to the SEC.
Well, look, all these people that they want to come, a lot of people want to come to the SEC. But they give lip service till they get here. And when you start looking at that schedule, if you looked at the schedule next year for Alabama, good gosh, I mean, anybody else, if it wasn't Alabama, I'd say they'd be lucky to break even. Of course, Alabama, I'm gonna say, Alabama may have a loss or two next year. The salvation will be they return a bunch of kids, both on offense and defense. That'll be their salvation. But they're gonna really have to go work. There ain't gonna be no more Chattanoogas on the schedule, or Elon College or whoever. There's not gonna be that. They're gonna have competition almost every Saturday when they line up with this. And they're going to 9 conference games as well.
Yeah, I did. When I saw the schedule, I believe they play Oklahoma before they play Auburn, so that's not easy either.
No, it's not. And they play Texas, and they go to Wisconsin. I mean, they play a massive schedule next year. And that doesn't include Georgia and Tennessee and, all the regulars they go play. Georgia's on their schedule, too, next year in the regular schedule. So, because, there's no East and West anymore.
Yeah.
It's all 1 through 16 now.
Oh, yeah, and you kick off November by playing LSU, too. So there you got that one in there.
That's right. Oh, listen, there ain't no breathing. I mean, those kids that play, they better get a lot of rest during the week. So they're going to have to play hard on Saturday to keep winning like they would in the past.
Yeah, Vanderbilt is not on the schedule next year, so there's not that week to get through.
That's right.
Before I let you go, also, your alma mater, the Troy Trojans, won their second straight Sun Belt Championship, beating Appalachian State 49-23. Kind of a close game early, but they pulled away there in the second half. Seems kind of like a theme with this Troy team this year. First half is kind of close. Defense steps up, and the offense in the second half, and they usually pull away. Just John Sumrall, I mean, I don't know if you saw the little blow-up he had over there on the sideline.
Oh, my goodness.
Full of energy, but just your thoughts.
Okay, I saw that. I replayed. Of course, I was watching the Alabama game on Saturday night, but on our TV up here, they replayed the whole game last night on ESPNU. So I sit and watched the whole game, and I thought that was an assistant coach at first, and because he even turned on the GA that was trying to hold him off the field.
Sure did.
The GA, that's what that guy's supposed to do, is to keep the coach on the sideline. He's a get back coach, is what he is. So, but he turned on him, and I was surprised. I knew he was highly emotional, and but I'd never seen him, be that. And they said it was a face mask call that they didn't call. But I mean, it wasn't that. They replayed the play, and it showed the kid caught him by the face mask first, but it wasn't that flagrant. It wasn't one that would damage the kid. He went down pretty quick. But anyway, bottom line is, John Sumrall's done an outstanding job. In fact, I'm going to tell you what I was hearing inside. Had Mark Stoops taken the Texas A&M job, Sumrall would be the head coach at Kentucky. Because I think they're going to get him, bring him back. He played there. He was assistant head coach, coaching the defense when Troy hired him. Now, Troy's done everything they can. They've got his salary up over $1 million now. And he's what, 20? He's 22-2 or something like that. Or, no, 22-4, because he lost 2 last year and 2 this year. So he's done a fantastic job. That defense is swarming, buddy. I'm going to tell you that I didn't see one single tackle. Every tackle I saw in that ball game has 2 or 3 guys on top of him. And that even in the secondary as well. So it was 14-7 at halftime. But see, the defense set them up, and the defense scored a couple of ball games. One, toward the end of the fourth quarter. The quarterback was on about the 20. He goes back to pass. The defensive end rushes by and takes the ball out of his hand and scores. And we're back down about the 20-yard on their own 20. So it was a really, I thought, well-coached ball game. And I'm trying to work some things right now to be in the press box at Birmingham, at the Birmingham Bowl, because I don't think they're going to find anybody. I played there, I coached there, and I'm in the Hall of Fame there. So, and I coached the first national championship team that Troy had. So I'm going to pull all my strings to get a press box pass to watch that ball game. They're going to play Duke, and they got a chance. They'll have to play a really good ball game because that's another level. But they played at another level most of the ball games this year. So I'm proud for them, and I'm proud to say I'm alumni from there.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's going to be fun because the Troy fans are going to travel for that one. Being in Birmingham, it's going to be the Vet North. So I feel bad for Duke because it's going to probably feel like they're in Troy with the fans the way they're going to travel. But Coach, I appreciate you doing this again, coming on the show. Anything else before we close up our conversation?
Well, a couple of things. One is that I'm paying a lot of attention to recruiting this year. The feeling that I get in talking to a lot of coaches, of course, the early signing period is coming up this week, coming week. But the high school kids, I hate to say this, have taken a back seat to the portal. Mm-hmm. And if you're coaching, you understand why. If you got a chance to pick up a kid that's rather just 18 coming to high school, that's never played in college, or a sophomore that's a 20-year-old that's been in a good program, in a good weight program, that's already accustomed to, learning the rigors of college football, which one you going to take? I mean, and the number I'm hearing out of 25, they're going to try to take 10 high school kids and 15 portals on the schools that are really recruiting the portals. Now, we got some like that. Dabo at Clemson, and there's a couple of out there around the country that's still hanging in there with 18 or 20 high school kids. Well, look, Dabo went 8-4 this year, so and he still says he's going to keep it that way. Well, I know he's come a long way. They got him up at a high salary, but eventually, if he keeps bucking the system, then it'll be time for him for early retirement from Clemson. I can promise you that, because he set the bar already, pretty high. So we'll get a chance to see. But that's what I'm doing coming up now. Is I've jumped off because the games themselves won't start back up till the bowl games will start back up in a couple of weeks. Of the ones I want to watch. So I'll pay a lot of attention to recruiting now, particularly in the SEC.
Oh yeah, it never ends. It's a constant thing. That's why Dan Mullen's on ESPN right now and not on the sidelines anymore. But anyways, Coach, I appreciate the time, and I look forward to doing this again sometime down the road.
Anytime. I love being on with you. Thank you so much, Phillip.